Ichha meena vihara kachchapa mahapotrin yadrichha harehe raksha vamana rosha rama karuna kakutstha hela halin Krida vallava kalka vahana dasha kalkinnitif pratyaham jalpantah purusha punanti bhuvanam punyogha panyapanaha. This is a beautiful verse from a Sanskrit poet called Vedanta Deshika, who says the importance and a peculiar characteristic associated with each of the incarnations of the Lord. So he says, Ichha meena vihara kachchapa mahapotrin. So each of these incarnations has been mentioned. Like the last episode, we were talking about the incarnation of Kurmam, tortoise. While the Devas and Asuras were churning this ocean of milk with the Mandara mountain as the churning rod and Vasuki snake as the churning rope, they were churning. All that they could get was a list. I can tell you what all came. Initially, there was this poison that came out, which is called Halahala Visham, which was consumed by Lord Shiv, and he let it stay here. Hence, he is called as Nilakant. On the other hand, there came the Uchchaishravas, the celestial horse, Airavat, which was a celestial elephant. Then came the Karpaka Vriksh, which is the wish-shielding tree. Then came Kamadhenu, which is the wish-shielding cow. Then came Kaustubhamani, which is a very resplendent gem. Then came moon, which adorned the locks of Lord Shiva. Then came Mahalakshmi. Then came Amrut, which was kept in a pot, and that was brought by Dhanvantri. Now the Devas and Asuras, when they saw the Amrut that came, they stopped churning and they started running behind Dhanvantri. Dhanvantri did not know. He did not know what to do, and he did not even have the idea how to distribute the Amrit between the Devas and the Asuras. That time, the Lord, incarnated as Mohini, a beautiful damsel, he walked before the Devas and Asuras and said, I am going to distribute this Amrit for you, the ambrosia for you. So he kept Devas on one side, Asuras on one side, and every time he would give the share of ambrosia to the Danavas, because he knew those people, after becoming immortal, will not serve the mankind for good purposes. They had demoniac qualities, while the Devas would do good for the people. So every time he would serve the Danavas, it would turn into Varuni, which is an intoxicating drink. And every time he would serve the Devas, it would turn into ambrosia, which is the nectar. There was one person who disguised himself and came to the side of Devas, whom the sun and the moon god observed. Meanwhile, when the Lord was giving Amrit, he consumed it, and when he was finishing, just about to finish his consumption, Chandra and Surya, sun and the moon god, they pointed to Mohini saying that, hey Lord, though you have disguised yourself, there is one person who has cheated us and who has come from the Danava side to our side. And while he was just about to run, the Lord with his chakra, Pratibhatashreni bhishana varaguna bhushana jani bhayasthana tarana jagadavasthana karana nikila dushkarma karshana nigama sadharma darshana jaya Shri Sudarshan Jaya Shri Sudarshan. That Sudarshan chakra went and cut this person's head. Since he had already consumed the nectar, he could not be killed, but his head was chopped. Meanwhile, a snake that was just going that way was seen. So he cut the snake's head into its head and the tail, and the head was attached to this headless body, and the tail of that snake was attached to the head, which was chopped off his body. So they are called as Rahu and Ketu in the 9 planets of Navagraha. While this was being done, this entire story of how Kurmavatar appeared and how the Lord created Rahu and Ketu out of that particular dana was all mentioned as a story by Vishwamitra to Ram. Now that we have seen that every story has a meaning, why was this story told? Because when Shiva had consumed poison, this particular story was enacted because in the same Ramayana, in Yuddha Kand, it will be observed that with Nagastra, Ram's brother Lakshman swoons. So to bring back Lakshman to life, it is not Rudra, it is not Shiv, but Rudra Avatar, the incarnation of Shiv, Shankara Suvana, Kesari Nandan, who's Hanuman, who's going to fly to bring the Sanjeevani Parvat and bring back Lakshman to life. To enact the scene that it was Rudra, Shiv, who saved the world of the poison, and now which is Rudravatar, that is Hanuman who is going to save the brother, this story was told. Moreover, there is one place where he mentions about the incarnation of the Lord as a lady, as a damsel, which is called Mohini Avataram. Why was this incarnation of the Lord as a lady mentioned here? Because the Lord is called Purushottamaha, he is the best amongst the men. So, to this best amongst the men, there is going to be one accusation which Sita is going to do in Ayodhya Kand. When Ram has been asked to go to forest, he comes and tells Sita, Sita, for 14 years I may have to live away from you, so don't worry, take care of my mother, live happily in Ayodhya, I'll go back to the forest, come back in 14 years. She disagrees. She says, to every place wherever you go, I'll follow Ram. Wherever you live is my Ayodhya. This is not Ayodhya. Wherever you live is Ayodhya to me, so I shall follow you. Ram disagrees. She disagrees. Ram disagrees. She disagrees. Finally, she says, it is my father's mistake for having got married me to you. He wonders, hey Sita, why do you blame your father Janak for this? She says, he thought he's going to get me married to a man. He didn't realize that it was after all a lady in the disguise of a man. Kim tvam anyata vaidehaha pitame mithiladhipaha ramajamataram prapya striyam purusha vigraham. You are after all a lady who's dressed in the robes of a man. While Ram heard this, he felt really bad. But to convince Ram or to keep Ram prepared of such a situation where somebody is going to accuse the Purushottam, the Maryada Purush Ram, of being a lady. Being a lady is great, but accusing a man that you're a lady, that needs a lot of courage. To keep him prepared, Vishwamitra told, hey Ram, remember you as Narayan incarnated as Mohini, which is also an incarnation of a lady, a damsel. So this particular story of Kurmavatar was mentioned so as to tell us of the fact that every shlok, every anecdote, every little story in Ramayana has some kind of an importance that it bears in the later chapters. While Ram, Lakshman were listening to the stories, they walked by, they reached a hermitage, and the hermitage was very, very peaceful. Ram walked, and while he walked, suddenly Vishwamitra said, I need to tell you the story of this ashram. This ashram is a great place where great sages have meditated. And Ram asks, whose ashram is this? Vishwamitra says, this is the ashram of the great sage Gautam. Gautam was married to Ahalya, who was one of the most beautiful creations of Lord Brahma. But while she was married itself, Indra, the god, he was bent upon attaining Ahalya. He was interested in Ahalya, but she was married and she was now the wife of Gautam Rishi. One day, Indra, in the urge of attaining her, came and started crowing. And when Gautam Rishi heard, he thought it is early morning and he had to go and perform his daily Vaidika karma, and he started walking towards the river. While he walked towards the river, Indra, in the form, in the disguise of Gautam Rishi, walked inside the ashram, and he slept next to the sleeping Ahalya. He hugged her, and at that particular point of time, Ahalya turned towards the side of the so-called Gautam Rishi, and while she hugged him, she had the feeling that this is not my husband Gautam. She knew it must be the god who's Indra. So there are two versions here. One version is, according to Ramayana, Ahalya very much knew that it was Indra who had come in the disguise of her husband, yet she was reluctant to tell Indra that I am not for you, I am somebody else's wife, and let's have some fun with him. So this was one of the feelings she had. Some others say, my husband Gautam Maharishi, every day he performs yajna, and in that yajna there is one mantra, Indraya Swaha. So there is one particular mantra which denotes Indra. So Indra is a god whom my husband worships. So when the Lord himself comes before, so why should I not satisfy him, was her thought. Say some. So whichever version it is, she knew it was not her husband, it was somebody else. So she lived with him, and meanwhile Gautam Rishi, who had gone to the river, realized that it was somebody else's prank, and the minute he came, he saw himself in another form, and he really got angry, and so he cursed, hey Indra, you will be your entire body, which you think is one mass of flesh which you can impress so many women, will turn into a body of 1,000 eyes, and you will become the most ugliest creature on earth. And he cursed Indra. Meanwhile, he said, Hey Ahalya, I curse that you should feel for what you have done by being invisible. Adrishya bhava, you will become invisible. And Tulsidas, who wrote his regional version in Hindi, and Kamban, the Tamil poet who wrote the regional version in Tamil, are of the opinion that she was cursed to be a stone. Whatever be it, invisible and stone. Though stone is visible, yet when you walk on the road, you don't pay attention to it, because that acts like invisible before you. You don't give importance to it. So invisible and stone may be synonymous in the real life scenario. So she was cursed and she lived in that ashram. So this entire story of how Ahalya was cursed by her husband Gautam Rishi was narrated by Vishwamitra. Ram was walking, and while Ram was just walking, in a minute, Vishwamitra turned and saw, and at that spot stood a resplendent lady with all halo around her. And he then thought, this must be Ahalya, and she must have got her the Shapa Vimochan from Ram himself. But how did Ram give Shapa Vimochan to Ahalya? Was it through his feet? Was it through the sandals that were associated with the feet? Or was it through the dust that arose out of his sandals, out of him walking? We do not know it's his feet, his sandals, or the dust. But for all of this, we need to wait for the next episode. Thank you.